Welcome to this video on Introduction to UNIX. This is the first in a series of short videos intended for people doing the FSL course. It's important to know something about UNIX in order to get the most out of FSL and to get the most out of the course. You don't need to know a lot about UNIX, you just need to really master some of the basics. And that's what this series of videos is intended to get you to. So without further ado, let's start. Now the first thing that we need you to do is to make sure that you've got a computer with FSL installed on it. So if you haven't got that done already, then go away and do that. And once you've got that, then go to the FSL Course website and download the UNIX intro zip file. Once you've done that, we'll move it to the home directory and unpack that. So we'll do that by using the graphical file browser. I'm on a Mac, but this will work the same way in a Linux system or in the virtual machine on a Windows platform. So if you are using a Windows machine, make sure that you start the virtual machine associated with FSL, because we'll need that to run so that you're actually in a Linux environment and that you can actually try the terminal out and you will have an FSL installed. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll open up a graphical file browser. So use whatever is associated with your system. I'm going to go to downloads, and then these are ordered by the most recent, and I've got my UNIX intro zip file there. I want to put that into the home directory, so I'm simply going to drag it into my home directory here. I'm going to have a look and check that that's ended up in the right place. There it is. I'm going to double click on it, and now I've actually got a directory which is unpacked. So you need to follow that same set of things or something very similar in order to get this. It doesn't have to go in your home directory, it's just convenient for us to do that. And this is just a set of files which will allow us all to be able to do the same kinds of things so that you can follow along to what I'm going to show you inside the terminal environment. Now I really recommend that you do actually watch the video and then go away and repeat what I'm doing in a terminal, or do it side by side. So watch a little bit of video, pause it and repeat what I'm doing so that you get familiar with what's going on, because there's no substitute for just practicing the skills yourself and seeing how they work. Okay, so we've got our data set up now, so let's go and actually open a terminal. In order to do that, you need to first find where the terminal is. Now, the easiest way normally is to open this kind of file browser and then go into applications and utilities and find a terminal. Now for Mac users that will work. If you're on a Linux or you're in the virtual machine Linux on a Windows platform, then you'll find a similar thing, or it's possibly under some of the menus here. There might be a system tools menu or a utilities or something like that. Have a search around and then find the terminal or something similar to that. It might be called slightly different, but it will have something like terminal in the name. Start that and you should end up with a window like the following. Okay, so this black window is actually our terminal. So I'll get rid of this graphical browser now because we're going to look at the terminal. I'll make it a little bit bigger and make the font a little bit bigger so that you can see it a bit more clearly. This is actually where we're going to interact with all of the Linux commands that we're going to use in order to navigate around your files, in order to do things like moving them, making new folders, and also running the FSL commands. There are lots of FSL commands which run only through the terminal, and so you'll get a lot more out of FSL by being able to use this. Okay, so let's start with the first command. The first command is one called ls. Most of the UNIX commands are very short. They're intended for people who really could only type with two fingers, I think. And the idea is that they each stand for something. So ls in this instance stands for list, which is a list of files. So if I type ls and press return, what I get is a list of all the files which happen to be in my home directory. I can confirm this by going back to our graphical file browser and having a look at what's there. Okay, so you can see that all of the files which are listed here are actually the same files as I've got in this directory listing over here. I'm going to use the word directory and folders interchangeably. They mean the same thing. Often we talk about directories when we're talking about Unix or Linux, and we talk about folders when we're actually using graphical file browsers, but they mean exactly the same thing. Okay, so that's the first simple command. We're going to need to learn a few commands, not a lot, and there was a sheet that you can also download off of the FSL Course website, which has a list of the most common commands that you'll need. You only really need to memorize a small section of those, and they're the ones that we're really going to cover in these short videos. Okay, so we've got our first UNIX command, which is ls, and that shows us the list of files in the current working directory, or the present working directory that your terminal is in. So in the same way that the graphical file browser shows you whatever you happen to be in, so if I'm in my home directory, I can see what's in my home directory. If I double click on another one, I see what's in that directory. So now this is the UNIX intro directory. The same thing happens in the terminal, but the location is a little bit more hidden. So you don't necessarily see where it is to start with. And if I type ls again, I simply get my home directory, because that's where it's currently located. It has the idea of being located somewhere, exactly the same way as the graphical file browser here is located somewhere. It's currently located in UNIX intro, which it actually tells you at the top. And so if I went back to the home folder again, it would show me that I'm in the home. The terminal doesn't tell me that quite so clearly. But I can still move around. And the second command that we're going to use is the one which enables us to move around. It's called change directory. So as I said, directory is another name for folder. So change directory allows us to move. So cd space, and then I could give it the name of any of these folders, any of the directories. Let's go into UNIX intro, because that's one that you'll have as well. So I cd into that. It actually shows that to me here because that's part of my prompt. And my prompt happens to be working in a way that it does show me that. But that is customized on each different system. And so your system may or may not show you what's going on here. Your prompt may not change at all. Or your prompt might show you this, or an even longer version of where you are. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect how things are going to work. Just be aware of that. The crucial thing is that this cd command has now moved us into this directory. So in the same way that if over here I double clicked on this directory, I moved into that directory, it shows me a listing of things here. If I did a listing, an ls, then I would see that same list of files, the ones that are inside the UNIX intro directory, because that's where it's currently located. I can also find out where it is located, or the present working directory, by our third command, which is pwd, present working directory. So if I type that, then it shows me where I am. And it actually shows me this as a big long text string, which gives me directions for how to find the current location that I'm in, the present working directory. It does that by separating folder names with slashes in a hierarchy. So it starts at the top of the hard drive, and then I go into a folder called users, or a directory called users. Then I go into one called mark, and then I go into one called UNIX intro, and that's where I happen to be now. So if I looked at the same thing over here, I could actually find the top of my hard drive. So I could go here, I would find a folder called users, inside that one called mark, and inside that one called UNIX intro. So that's all that's telling us. It's telling us how to find the current location starting at the very top of the hard drive. That's what's called an absolute path. It tells us the directions for finding something starting at an absolute reference, the top of the hard drive. So slash on its own means the top of the hard drive, and then you just add layers and layers of directories or folders in the same way that you would navigate through them in that graphical file browser. Okay? Now, how do we get back out of here into our home directory? Well, there are two ways that we can get to our home directory. One way is we can just type cd on its own. If I type cd, then I am back in my home directory, and that works from anywhere. cd on its own will always take you back to your own home directory. That's where the terminals always start, and that's where is the default to go back to. But let's go back to our UNIX intro now. Okay, so my present working directory is that. I can check by doing an ls that I've got those files, so I am in this location. That's where this terminal is currently residing. An alternative to get back to my home directory is to go up one. So this is the third level of this hierarchy. I could go back to the second level. and that's going up one level, and to do that I do cd space ... That's a shorthand for going up. In the same way that if I looked at the hierarchy in this way over here in my file browser, this one over here is one up from that one. This is slightly deeper than the directory above, and so I could go back to that directory, which would happen to be, in this case, my home directory. So if I do cd ... over here, then I'm back to my home directory. And I can see that in two ways. If I do pwd, I see that it's that home directory. If I do ls, I see the files which I'm now familiar with, the ones which are in my home directory. Okay, so that's the end of this first short video on the introduction to Unix. We've learned how to list files, we've learned how to navigate around, we've learned a little bit about paths. We'll be using all of those techniques in the subsequent videos.